So good to see all of you guys here today. I really am surprised. All morning I've been surprised. We have over 100 ladies on a women's retreat right now. We have a bunch of teenagers at a high school retreat, and they were calling for storms all morning, and I thought we'll have 18 people here. That's what we'll have. We'll have 18 people because the guys will be at home with their wives gone thinking, do I want to get the kids up in the storm? No, I don't. And turn the TV on, watch the Masters or something. So I am just so excited that you're here. It's very good to see all of you. This weekend, if you're thinking about this weekend, I want to encourage you to consider Saturday as an option for Easter. We have 2 services on Saturday, the regular 3 on Sunday. If you come on Sunday morning, if you would consider, I'll give you an insider tip that they won't know next week when they show up and get in the crowded parking lot. You can park at Chapman's Retreat, and we'll have shuttles going back and forth, 3 shuttles to keep it moving. You won't have to wait very long. You can park down there. They'll bring you right to the door. You can avoid all of the mess that's going to be behind me right now, and you can do that next week, and that would be a great way for you to celebrate and help us out, make things available for other people who don't know about that. So that would be great. Today we're continuing our series we've called It Starts Here, where we're just committed to trying to make an impact in our world. The church historically, notoriously, has been known for a lot of talk and not a lot of action. A lot of let's talk about what things should be like or what things are not like or what we don't like about the world and not really doing much about it. And we have always been different than that in terms of the way we see it. And we want to make a change on our perception. We want to bring mercy to the world and justice to the world. And we feel like that starts with us. Like because of what God did on the cross, He gives us the ability to make a difference in this world, to bring the countercultural values of Jesus, the ones He lived and taught and showed, demonstrated, to bring those through our hands and through our feet and our mouth and our eyes. And so we're very excited about what's happening with that. Now, next week's going to be very cool in this regard. Next week, the takeaway, the application, is we're going to be doing a food drive. So if you weren't with us last week, you may not be aware of that. We have bags out in the lobby. You can grab one of those, giving those out, and you'll bring those back next week. There's a shopping list in here. You can get some food items for the Well, the local food pantry that we helped start, and you can bring that back. It's got a tag on there that says, "It starts here," and on the back it says, "With me." And so you can put your name on there. If you have your kids are involved, have them sign it too. So we're bringing this to help our neighbors because feeding the community starts with us. Loving our neighbors starts with us. And so you can bring this back, and we're going to have this cool thing that you'll see next week, kind of a surprise. But you'll hang all of these tags up together, and we'll have all those kind of together to see that picture, and then a truck loaded full over the weekend of all this food that people are bringing in. So grab one of these if you don't have it. If you've already used yours and you want to grab another, by all means do that. And if you don't have a bag or you forget about it, just bring, you don't have to have the bag. That's just something to make it easy for you to do. But that's next week. Today's application is not an outside group like we've kind of focused on the last few weeks. Today's something that happened within WellSpring. The WellSpring family kind of birthed this idea. It wasn't mine. Many of you work in downtown Nashville, or you work in Columbia, down in the central part of Columbia, and you're seeing the growing homeless population in both of those cities. Really, there's been quite a bit of talk about both those cities seeing an increase. And so you realize this. Whether you work downtown or not, you've been up to the intersection where you pulled up and you see a guy up there with the sign, and you're thinking, I don't want to give him money because I know that's a bad idea. They're going to fund things that I don't want to fund there, but I don't want to act like I don't notice him. I don't want, kind of do this kind of deal. But what do I do? And there's that tugging at that intersection of what to do, because this is a fellow human being created by God, loved by God. Jesus died on the cross, not just for my sins, but for their sins. So I got to show the love of God to them, but how do I do that? Because I'm not really prepared for that. If I just had a bag of McDonald's all the time with me, I could hand them a bag of McDonald's, and it would keep for 3 or 4 months. I wouldn't have changed it that often. Kangaroo doesn't spoil, so I could keep that right there in the bag with me, but I don't have that typically. So I'm like, well, what do I do? How do I help? Well, we want to help with that. So a group within WellSpring created this idea called a blessing bag, and we have a bunch of them here along the front of the stage. You can grab one of those if you want one of those. But in here, there's a water bottle, there's hygiene stuff, there's some information, there's all kinds of stuff. And the bag itself is helpful to help them get their stuff around. It has a reflective strip, which makes it safe at night. And so what we're asking today is if you work in downtown Nashville, you work in Columbia, and you want to grab one of these, by all means, grab one. If you don't work in one of those places, so you're not there all the time, I don't get to Nashville all that often, so I'm not there all the time. I don't want me to grab one today because we're going to run out for those who are working downtown. But if you want one and you don't go to Nashville all the time, just write blessing bag on your card, And as we make more, if you want more, we'll let you know there's more available. These cost, when we've put the cost together, it's about $17 a piece because we buy things in bulk. So we buy, boxes of each of these items. So if you want to help with that, we'll always look for volunteers to help pack them together or money to fund them. And as money and need and volunteers all come together, then we'll make more and we'll let you know about that. So if you want to help, if you want additional ones of these, if you're going to take one today, but you might want more later as you give them out, write blessing bag on the card. We'll create a big master list of that, and we'll let you know as any of those options come available to make more, which will be cool. Now, here's the thing. It's funny. First hour, at this point in the message, I noticed Barry kind of slinking up the side of the room. So I'm like, what's he doing? He's not there now. You guys are looking. He's not there now. He was there the first hour. So he's coming, and I'm talking, trying to act like I don't notice him because I don't want to draw attention to him. And I'm like, is my mic off, or I need to wipe my nose or something? Like, what's going on here? He's coming up to talk to me. So he walks up the thing and just goes backstage. I'm like, well, that's weird. Is there like food back, granola bars back there or something? He's wanting a little snack. I don't know. So I'm just trying to go on without paying attention to him. And then afterwards, he's apologizing to me for coming in. I was like, well, that's fine. What happened? At this point in the message, a homeless person came in saying, do you guys ever help with homeless people? I have some, and he's like, yes, but all of our extra bags were backstage. So he went backstage, got one of those, and he said, I'm so sorry for interrupting. I said, no, that's fantastic because there are people who have those needs, even in Spring Hill. And so we've already given one of those out this morning to somebody in need, and it's just the kind of thing. So if you work downtown, grab one of those. If you don't work downtown, but you'd like to know more about that, or you'd like to have them available when we get more available, just any of that, put it on the card, and that would be great. Blessing bag, and we'll put you on a list, okay? We also want to welcome our 2nd to 5th grade students today because we have so many of our folks out at this retreat. We wanted to have the older elementary kids in with us, so we're glad to do that. It's been a great retreat from what I understand. I'm not talking to Amy much. They've been busy retreating, whatever that looks like. I don't know, but I'm hearing reports back that it was great. And she was telling me this morning, or last night rather, she told me there was 5 different ladies that chose to get baptized last night at the service. So God's doing some cool things. There's going to be some cool stories to tell. And it's been a great weekend. Now, guys, if you have a wife on the retreat and you don't, I've been through this a few times. Let me give you just some sage advice if this is your first time. Your wife's going to get home in just a little bit, and she really is looking for 2 things. And you may think it's a hug and a kiss, but that's wrong. That's not what she's looking for. She really wants to. She wants a clean kitchen, and she wants a nap. So if you can go home in a minute and tidy things up, give it a quick one-over, and then get out of her way when she arrives the door, say hi to her, but let her through to go lay down somewhere. That's really what she's looking for, and you can give her a hug later. I'm sure she'll appreciate that after she's had the clean kitchen and the nap. So you can do that. All right? So today, I want to give you a heads up where we're going today. So if you have on a scale like the deep theological messages over here and the highly practical messages over here, we're way on this side today. So if you're looking for deep and theological, come back another week and we'll try to address that. But today, I want to be ultra practical because the message today is about the value of Jesus of compassion. Jesus showed compassion. So I just want to be very practical about how we do that. And to help with that, I want one of our elementary students to help me. So if one of you guys, that's the first hand I saw right there. Yeah, come on up. Let's give her a hand for coming up to help us. That's great. And while she's doing that, can you turn in your Bibles to Mark chapter 9? We'll be there in just a minute. So Mark chapter 9, page 706, and the Bible's there in your seat. All right. How are you?
Good.
Fantastic. She looks excited, doesn't she? Very good. Scared to death. Okay, so have you ever watched Price is Right? Anything about Price is Right? She does. Fantastic. First hour is like, Price is Right? We got a little Price is Right thing for you, all right? So we have several items here, and I'm going to have you put them in order on price, okay? So here's the price cards. Maybe you can get some hints. So we have an Xbox One for all the Xbox One fans. We have a drink from the Compassion Cooler out in the lobby. We have a VIP package to the NFL Draft. This is not like the regular freebie deal. This is the free food and beverage, commemorative gift, NFL legend meet and greet, exclusive covered deck, all of this cool stuff here. We also have a bag of Chick-fil-A. Now for today, just count the regular price. On Sunday, it's probably worth more because you supply and demand. You can get more today I'm not saying that. Just the regular, normal price for that. We have a mani-pedi for the moms coming back from their retreat. A little idea for you. Clean kitchen nap and a mani-pedi. We have a cup of water. And we have an iPhone. And help me out. Is it XR or 10R? How do we say that? I know it's the letter X. Is it XR? How many vote XR? How many vote 10R? How many have a Samsung and don't care? Anybody? Okay, a few of you. Okay, good. Well, whatever that is, it's an iPhone. So there's your prices. Put them in order. This is good thinking music, isn't it? Oh, that's good. $6.39 Chick-fil-A. Okay. That's a good start. Petty. All right. She's a skilled tactician, I can tell. I'm messing around here. $1 for the drink. Good call. She's 3 for 3. Now it's getting tricky. Oh yeah, 5 cents for the water. Good call. Now it gets dicey. These are the hard ones. $7.49 for the NFL. Okay. How do you think she did? Isn't that pretty good? You just missed 2. Just missed these 2. Other than that, you're right on. iPhone's a little more expensive, but that's a great job. Well done. Fantastic. Give her a hand. That's good. That's pretty good. 6 out of 8 or whatever, 7? 5 out of 7? That's pretty good. Now, with that in mind, this is the backdrop for you. I want you to look at a weird verse from the teachings of Jesus. Matthew chapter 10 says, if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you that person will certainly not lose their reward. So Jesus is saying it's a big deal to give a cup of cold water. Now that's important because a cup of cold water is not that big a deal. I mean, it's not like you're giving an iPhone or an Xbox or something like that. A cup of water was the cheapest one on the whole list. It's just not that big a deal. And yet God says he notices when you give a cup of cold water because it's an act of compassion. You know, someone's walking along in Jesus' day. He lived in the Middle East, so it would have been hot and dusty and dry, and a cup of water would have been really helpful. And so Jesus says when you're going through your day and you look outside of yourself and see someone else going through their day and think, you know what, I could give them this and it would really help them out, that God notices that. Now, it's not that he's opposed to an Xbox or an iPhone and those kind of gifts. It's like if you felt compassion on me and wanted to give me the VIP NFL draft thing, you could do that. No one's opposed to that. But God's saying, even if you just give a cup of water, that's a big deal in God's eyes. He notices that. It's like when Jesus was watching people put their money in the offering in Mark 12. Mark 12 says, Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple, and he watched as the crowds dropped in their money, and many rich people put in large amounts. Jesus says nothing. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins, a couple of cents, and Jesus called his disciples and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making their contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. You know, Jesus is so cool when you watch him interact with people because he's not impressed by the things that impress all of us. You don't have to be rich to impress Jesus. You don't have to be famous or talented. Even just a couple of pennies impresses Jesus because your heart's right. Even a cup of water impresses Jesus because you've looked outside of yourself and said, let me help them out in their situation. You know, students, since you were in here with us, sometimes I think in churches we say adults are the ones who do everything and students' job is just to wait till they're adults. You don't have to be an adult to show compassion. You know, sometimes we act like grown-ups matter more than kids do. It's not true in God's eyes, but we feel that way sometimes because the grown-ups are the ones who teach and they're the ones who lead and they're the ones who make decisions. But I want you to notice that Jesus notices when a lady puts in 2 pennies. He notices that. He notices when someone sees someone thirsty and offers them a cup of water, and all of us, no matter what our situation is, all of us can do that. In fact, if you look at Mark's gospel, when he records this same story, a kid's involved in the story. Look at Mark chapter 9, verse 41 is what I want you to look at, page 706. Mark 9:41 looks very familiar, like Matthew's passage, where it says, truly I tell you, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name because you belong to the Messiah will certainly not lose their reward. Same passage. Different context, different setting. So that means Jesus told this story more than once. It's probably something he said often. Maybe it's a phrase of Jesus, giving a cup of cold water, something they would do. But I want you to notice the setting. Look at verse 36. Verse 36 says, Jesus took a little child whom he placed among them, and he took the child in his arms, and he said to them, and he begins to teach them, while the child's sitting on his lap. And he's looking at that teaching. It goes on down through verse 41, where he says, anyone who gives a cup of cold water in my name, because you belong to the Messiah, will certainly not lose their reward. And then verse 42 says, if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it'd be better for them if a large millstone were hung around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. So this whole time, from 36 all the way to 42, Jesus has this little child, little boy or little girl in his lap, his arms around him, and he's using this child as an illustration of what the life of God looks like. So it's not all the grown-up stuff we think about, all this big and complicated. It's having a humility before God. It's having a humility with people. It's going through life with an innocence like this child has. And one example of that is, even if you give a cup of cold water to somebody who's in need, I'm going to notice that. Because God notices when our heart looks outside of ourselves and sees someone else in need, even if it's just something really small that any of us can do. Jesus sees that. In Matthew's story and in Mark's, both, Jesus is saying compassion speaks to people. Compassion speaks to God. He notices that. Whether it's big sacrifices or just day-to-day moments, compassion speaks. And our compassion that we give to those around us comes to us from God himself, because our God is a God of compassion. Look at this passage out of Lamentations chapter 3. It says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. So he's saying we're not going to be consumed because God is compassionate to us. Every morning, God's compassion starts again new. It's refreshed every morning, like the battery on your cell phone. It's like new every morning. It never fails. Now, God doesn't drain out during the day by noon. That's a whole separate, but it never fails. It stays fresh every morning. Now, you might think this passage was written to them in the middle of a high time. Things are going well. The prophet's cheering, probably Jeremiah. Man, God, you're always so faithful. Everything's so good. Everything's so rich. Everything's so wonderful. But that's not the case. This passage is written right after the Babylonians had come in and invaded Jerusalem. They had killed a lot of people. They had destroyed a lot of buildings. They had taken some that they did not kill out of the community and taken them to Babylon to be captives. The ones who were staying there were now overseen by this foreign oppressive government, like it was among the lowest times in the history of the nation. And yet Jeremiah is saying, we won't be consumed. Even if it feels like we're going to be consumed, we won't be, because God's faithfulness is great. It's new every morning. Look at the passage right before this in verse 21. Jeremiah says, yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great compassion, we're not consumed. His compassion has never failed. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Like he said, I need a new sense of hope. I need a new sense of vision. So I call my mind to the faithfulness of God. You know, if you're lamenting things, if you're going through life and it's hard and you've got job issues or family issues or kid issues or health issues, and everything on the outside is saying things are bad, things are not good, things are hard, make your mind, call to mind the faithfulness of God, because his faithfulness is always true. So even if the outside says, man, things are bad, you can have peace on the inside because you're reminded of the faithfulness of God. It's new every morning. It's a good reminder for us. That passage ends in verse 24 by saying, I'll say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. I love that idea of God's portion, because isn't it true that in the middle of a lamenting, you may not be this way, I'm this way. In the middle of lamenting, when things are hard and I'm not excited, I'm discouraged, I look at my portion, what I've been given, and I compare it to everybody else's portion. And I say, well, why has he got a different deal than I do? Or why is her situation better? Or why aren't they having the same hardship that I'm having? Or why do they have more money or less pain? And I compare my portion to everybody else's portion. But Jeremiah says, I'm going to be reminded of the faithfulness of God. He's new every morning. And I'm going to be reminded that God is my portion. Even if my portion doesn't seem to line up to me with everybody else's, the Lord is my portion. I love the contemporary English version says, deep in my heart I'll say the Lord is all I need. I can depend on him. God's all you need. And if your portion doesn't seem like the right amount of fairness to you, and you're lamenting that, call to mind the faithfulness of God, because his compassion for you will not let you be consumed. It's new every morning. It's new every morning. My wife Amy noticed something really profound this past week about Jesus and his compassion for us. So on Palm Sunday, we celebrate that today. On Palm Sunday, Jesus rides into Jerusalem, and right before he comes in Jerusalem, it says he was up on a hill and he looked over the city, and it says his heart was moved with compassion for the people in the city. They were milling about, doing their thing, and he said, I wish you knew what would bring you peace, but you don't. I wish you knew. You just don't know what you're doing, but I wish you knew that, because I'm here and I would bring you peace, but you don't understand it. And so he's praying for them out of compassion. And then his week starts. That was Sunday. And then his week starts, and his disciples all turn on him. And he goes into the temple and is full of greedy money changers. He has to drive them out. And then he feels Judas's kiss, and he listens to Peter's betrayal, and he has the Jewish leaders spit on him, and then the Roman guards hit him and whip him and beat him and mock him. And then he has to drag his cross, not only physically demanding, but just embarrassing, through the city as this convicted guy getting ready to die carries his own cross up the hill. And then they nail his hands and his feet to a board and lift him up between heaven and earth to be mocked and ridiculed. And then he dies there. But right before he dies, to bookend the week, he looks down and finishes the week just like he started it, where he says, you don't even know what you're doing. God, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. And Jesus' compassion never wavered. It started with compassion. I wish you knew how to find peace. And he goes through all of this mess, and it ends still on compassion, which is so helpful for me, because it wouldn't take that much to knock me off. Like, I would start out with compassion, and somebody spits on me, and it's done. My compassion's over. Like, that's all it took. I didn't need anything else. Somebody betrays me, I'm done. Somebody mocks me, it's over. Compassion goes off. Jesus never gets off of compassion. He stays. His faithfulness never wavers. Just like the passage in Lamentations, his mercies are new every morning. Never goes away. You can be reminded of the faithfulness of God, because his compassion never wavers. So he's never going to allow you to be destroyed. He's always going to be there for you. You know, when you and I truly understand this, we experience a peace and a freedom that doesn't come almost any other way. Because now, if God's in charge of the universe and his compassion for me never fails, no matter what I do, now I'm free. Like, I don't have to hang on to my time, because he provides everything I need. And I don't have to hang on to my stuff, because he provides everything I need. And I don't have to be consumed with self. I can be focused on everybody else, because his mercies for me are new every morning. And he's going to be there to provide whatever I need. You know, I want us to be a church that's known for compassion. Churches get known for all kinds of things. They get known for the way they treat people. They get known for having judgmental approaches to life. Or, you know, you ask people outside of church, what do you think about when you think of church? It's not typically compassion. What if WellSpring was known? What if the church was known as a place of compassion? I told you I wanted to be extra practical. Let me just give you some practical ideas of what you could do this week in your home, at work, to help to show compassion of God. You know, Jesus says, deliver a cup of cold water. Maybe that's something you ought to do. Or maybe an American translation would be, deliver a cup of hot coffee. So when you go into work, get some coffee for those that you're in your area, or get one for your spouse in the morning, first thing. Kids, something you can do is do your chores without being asked. Any amens in the room for that? Anybody? Yeah. Do your chores without being asked. You can look for ways to lighten the other person's load. Like, we're all so consumed with self, what I want, what I think, what I need. Look outside of that and say, this other person in my house, this other person in my office, how can I lighten their load? And then do something about that. Kids, you can do your chores without being asked. I'm just teasing. I didn't put that on there twice. Imagine yourself in their spot. Like, what would it be like if I was in their spot? And then change the way you view life, because you're viewing it from their angle. Maybe a way to show compassion is just to listen. Like, put your phone down, shut the television off, and give somebody undivided attention. Listen to them. That's a compassion we don't have a lot today. Maybe you could really pray for them. You know, Christians are notorious. I do this sometimes. Somebody will tell me something, I'll pray for that. And what does that typically mean? Nothing, often. Like, we say we'll pray for it, and then we get busy, and life goes on. Maybe but like, what would happen if somebody said, let me pray, and you pray for it right then? And then really pray for them over the next several days. Like, show compassion. Those aren't big, complicated things. Like, none of that list requires a lot of money or a lot of power or a lot of position. All of us can do that. It's kind of like a cup of water. Like, anybody can do that. But we can be known as a church of compassion, because when we do that, we point people to the God whose compassion is new every morning. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus gives us some concerns. I love the Message translation. He says, when you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself. Don't think about how it looks. Just do it quietly and unobtrusively. That's the way your God, who conceived you in love, working behind the scenes, helps you out. God doesn't say, hey, I'm going to do something nice for you. The whole world should notice. He just does things. Jesus just did things. He showed compassion even in the middle of things. So he said, when you do something nice, cup of cold water, whatever you do, when you do something nice, don't draw attention to it. It kind of ruins the whole thing, Jesus says. Just do something unobtrusively. And the other translations point out a little clearer than the Message. It says, then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So God says he's going to notice, even if the other people around you don't notice, and he's going to honor you. He's going to reward you for that. Now, that's a promise of God. You do something quietly without drawing attention to it, and God's going to notice it, and God's going to honor it. It may not be the way you think, it may not be immediately, but you can count on it. Even if it's just a cup of water given to someone who's thirsty. So he's asking us to do it to receive those rewards. In 2 Kings 5, let me end with this story. In 2 Kings 5, we read about a man named Naaman who was really sick. I'll skip through some details to make it easier, but he's really sick. And he heard that there was a prophet in Israel who could bring healing to somebody who's really sick. And so Naaman was a guy with some power, some position, some money. So he gets some servants together and some stuff to go buy this guy's healing. And he goes to Elisha and says, I want to be healed. I'll offer you anything. And Elisha says, I don't want your money. Keep that. I don't want any special privileges. I don't need any of that. Actually, there's some interesting stories you can read later in 2 Kings 5 about that. But he says, I don't need any of that. He says, all I'm asking you to do is go to the Jordan River. It's like a little muddy creek, honestly. Go to the Jordan River, go out in the middle of it, and dunk down 7 times, and you'll be healed. Well, Naaman does what a lot of us would do. Naaman's ticked off. He said, this is stupid. I can go dip in a creek at home. Why did I come all this way? Like, you should have had some wild potion or some incantation that you waved wildly over me. You just told me to go dunk in a... I'm not doing that. That's stupid. And he starts to go home with all of his servants and all of his stuff. And his servant said, wait a minute. Respectfully, you'd have done something if he told you something hard. If he told you to go on this wild journey and you'd have done that. He said, if the prophet had told you to do something great, you would have done it. How much more when he says, just wash and be cleansed? Like, just give that a shot and see what happens. And so Naaman does. He goes to the Jordan River. He goes out in the middle of it. He dunks down once, comes up. And the Bible doesn't tell us this, but I picture comes up wet and muddy and a little skeptical. And he dunks a second time, a little more skeptical. And a third time feels a little foolish, and a fourth and a fifth. And 6 times he dunks down and nothing changes. And he looks at his hands where the lesions are there. But on the 7th time, he's clean. And something miraculous happened in the middle of that. And I just want to say to you, God says when you do kind things, even just cups of water, without drawing attention to yourself, I'm going to notice, God says, and I'm going to bless you. I'm going to honor you for that. And if God asks us to do some big dramatic thing, we'd probably give it a shot. He says, just give some cups of cold water. Put that in quotes for whatever that might translate to in your life. And if you do it, I'll notice it. And if you do it, when I notice it, I'll honor you for it. I'll bless you for it. Let's put that to the test. Not to get something for us, but what would it look like if we all went out and we're looking for outside of ourselves for ways to bless other people? I think it would ripple out into quite a bit. So get creative, pray about that, and look for ways to extend yourself in the name of Jesus. Let's bow our heads in prayer. God, I thank you that you don't require us to be rich and famous to do important things. You notice little kids giving cups of water to those around them. You notice little old ladies putting in a couple of pennies into an offering. You notice things that blow past our attention. We don't see them, we don't notice them, we don't think about them, but you see them and you notice them and they matter to you because of the heart behind them. So God, I pray that you take every one of us and you would move our hearts to compassion And for some of us, that'll be a couple of pennies and a couple of glasses of water. For some of us, we can do dramatic things in the name of Jesus to change people's lives. But whatever you give us, God, would you move our hearts to be the kind of people who sacrifice what's best for us to help somebody around us? Not so that people can notice us, not so people can pat us on the back, but so that you can be famous. And people can realize there's a God who saves, a God who changes lives and changes hearts. And along the way, I think you'll honor us for it. Along the way, I think you'll honor us. So God, thank you that you run the universe, and we can trust you. Your mercies are new every morning. And we can trust you. Even when the things around us cause us to lament, we can trust you because you've provided everything we need. Church, would you take just a moment and pray through that? Maybe you need to be reminded that God gives you everything you need. Maybe you need to be given opportunities and ideas about how to be compassionate in your world. Maybe you just need to sit silently before God, but would you just take a moment to speak to the God of the universe, and then I'll pray for us to close. God, we're reminded of the great thing you did because of your compassion for us. You did far more than just a little cup of water. You gave your life for us. You carried your cross. You paid for my sins. And we honor you, God, for that. We praise you for that. And we praise you not just through our mouth. In these moments, we praise you with our hands, with our feet, with our life, with our stuff. We look for ways to honor you in everything we do. We do it because of Jesus. In his name.